All right, welcome to another episode of The Fundable Founder. I'm here today with Rahkeem Morris, founder and CEO at SYRG. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Charlie.
Yeah, it's exciting to have you on. I've been a big fan for a long time. So why don't we start by you telling us your elevator pitch? What is SYRG?
Yeah, SYRG, what we're building is a liquid universal network for hourly employees in which anyone can work at any place and at any time. Our targeted employers are QSRs, quick service restaurants, things like McDonald's and Wendy's and Taco Bell. What we do is we get in contact with their former employees and their former applicants, reach out to them, offer them full-time, part-time roles and roles on a temporary basis, returning former employees back to their companies and making sure that companies are saving thousands of dollars per hire that they make through our platform.
That's fantastic. And what kind of traction have you gotten with the business? How many employees and employers do you have on the platform?
Yeah. Over the last 35 weeks, we have amassed 40 customers on SYRG.
Wow.
On our product that we're delivering to customers right now, which we call the Future Employee Relationship Manager. And we have about 200,000 job seekers that are on our platform that we use as leads to make sure that we can staff these stores.
Awesome. And I imagine that, this is especially important. You never thought you were creating this business going into a pandemic, but especially important for helping people get back to work and helping these businesses get back off the ground in a lot of cases.
Yeah, exactly that. All these stores, they closed down once the pandemic happened. And actually, we had a business model before that relied on stores being open. And so the product that we're delivering right now is a new product that we created that we always had in our roadmap, but was especially relevant given the pandemic. And companies are reopening. And who are the best people that come back to stores when people are reopening, when companies are reopening? It's their former employees who have been trained already that can come in and hit the ground running. So yeah, it's resonating right now, our messaging, and companies are really picking it up.
And important, right? You're making a difference in the world with this business, which is great. So why don't you tell us the origin story of SYRG? Why did you decide to become an entrepreneur? Why did you decide to focus on this market?
Yeah, I founded SYRG because of my personal story. It starts a bit way back, and I have a 10-hour version of a beer one of these days, but I'll give you the 60-second version right now. When I was 14, my mom, who's a single parent, her employer gave her an ultimatum. She was given the ultimatum of working the morning shift, or she no longer had a job anymore. When that happened, I had to take on more family responsibilities. One of those things was to take my little brother to school every single day. This made me late all the time. This dominoed to missing entire days of school. I eventually dropped out of high school and began working hourly jobs over the course of the next 9 years, most of them minimum wage, often 2 or 3 at a time to make ends meet for me and my family. I eventually went back to high school when I was 18, graduated within a year. And then 4.5 years later, I graduated magna cum laude from Cornell.
That's great.
And I've had this resume that looks as if I come from a much different background than what I've come from, because I went to GE after I graduated, I worked at Google, and I've earned my MBA from Harvard about 2.5 years ago now.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And so, you're one of those founders who you were in the shoes of your end employees here, right? You were someone who worked in the quick service restaurant industry, correct?
Yeah. I can't tell you how many days I came home from Taco Bell and all the ingredients, it's kind of gross, but all the ingredients that you use to fill the taco, it always ends up on the ground. And so when you go home, you have all this food in the creases of your shoes, and you just knock them out every single night.
I can imagine.
And so, and also too, I still remember some of the weights of some of the food at Taco Bell. Like for example, a hard taco is 2.9 ounces. A soft taco is 3.6. Quesadilla, I believe, is 10.8. And so this knowledge retains, or you retain it for a long time, and it just speaks to the power that we're able to not only give to employees, to say that the skills and knowledge that you have is valuable, and that's the reason why companies want you back, because of your knowledge.
Exactly, right? Like you could walk into a Taco Bell tomorrow and probably with 10 minutes of training on the cash register be a productive employee.
Yeah, exactly. And then
maybe not even just a Taco Bell. You could probably do it at a Burger King or a Kentucky Fried Chicken or whatever, right? Because many of it, a lot of it's the same.
Yeah, and you think about your day-to-day work at these employers, it's a lot of rote memorization, and you do it so many times that knowledge becomes indelible. And it's valuable.
So you decided to launch SYRG was it more to help the employers or the employees? And what was the real pain point you were trying to solve?
Yeah, the pain point, it's to help both. I know that's the convenient answer. At the same time, it was genuinely to help both. And the pain point, I think your question was, what is the pain point that we're solving?
Yeah.
Yeah. The pain point that we're solving is that there are more than enough people to work jobs. At the same time, employers, they can't find people. So you go into any hourly employer, they're understaffed chronically, about 50% of their opening hours. And at the same time, you have 33 million people who employers have invested billions of dollars in training that are eligible and available to work these jobs. They're just not able to make that match work. And this is a $155 billion problem in the United States.
And then you're also connecting all those, you're creating a network of those employees as well, correct?
Yeah. Think about hourly employee, they're going and they're bouncing among different hourly employers in the same way that I did, from Taco Bell to Houlihan's to Pizzerino Uno's. They're going through employers and they have this training, this knowledge, but then after at the end of 3 years, you think about 100% turnover. At the end of 3 years, they have knowledge from 3 employers.
Right.
And so what eventually we want to do is to have this employee be able to work at those multiple employers, given their past experience, and create those channels among employers in the way that we're the middleman that makes sure that all the players in the market are successfully staffed and that competition thrives. Great.
So let's go back. Let's walk it back to when you really started to think about fundraising. What was your initial strategy for, how far did you feel like you needed to get the business with traction of customers, MVP product, whatever it might be, and when to start going out to investors? And then also, tell us a little bit about your strategy there. Did you raise some friends and family? Did you bootstrap for a while? Did you go out and raise some angel money? Like, if you can remember back at that time, what was your real strategy?
Yeah. So my real strategy in the beginning was no strategy.
That's a common theme on the Fundable Founder.
Oh yeah, it's when I say I walked in and had all the answers, I didn't have any answers. First couple of meetings were didn't turn any fruit, but over time, I began to develop relationships with other founders who had successfully raised money. A lot of those connections were made through accelerators. We had been to, I think, 2 or 3 accelerators, either through the school, through my MBA program, or things like Underscore that has a founder accelerator program there. And through these programs, I met other founders, understood what they were doing to be successful, and more or less emulated what they told me to success, to raise the money.
So how long did it take you to raise, to raise your first round? How many meetings do you think you had? How many people did you pitch?
Yeah. So the very first round, we have a unique fundraising journey in the way that we went to a competition in Houston called the Rice Business Plan Competition.
Okay.
And even though it's atypical, I think that this experience, it still conveys what is important when thinking about fundraising, what you need to do. So this tournament, this competition is 3 days. You do your pitch 4 times in front of a room of about 60 seasoned investors.
Okay.
And so you pitch for 15 minutes, and then for maybe 30, 45 minutes, maybe it's probably close to 15 minutes. It feels like 30 minutes. They all give you constructive feedback.
Yep.
And so we're getting all this useful, valuable information from 60 investors. And I would go home and iterate in my pitch, practice it maybe 10 or 15 times, come back. Those same 60 investors, or actually they interchanged, they mixed them up. Another 15 minutes of really good, helpful feedback from 60 investors, and then iterating on that over the course of 3 days. At the end of the 4 days here, the pitch was solid. And so I came back to Boston and was able to raise that next round of funding fairly quickly, actually. But it's only because I effectively ran through 60 investors.
In 3 days.
Yeah, 3 days.
That sounds exhausting.
Super exhausting. We got second. And if you do that and sort of have like a longer drawn out process, meeting 60 investors, I guarantee you at the end, your pitch is going to be very solid. And it was.
So I want to unpack that a little bit, because that's a really unique story about fundraising. And it's great that you were getting all this feedback in a short period of time. And by the end of it, your pitch was really honed. And a lot of people do that over the course of 3 or 4 months, meeting with 60 investors. But often you're getting different advice from different people about how to tell your story, things to emphasize, traction, or, talk about the platform aspect, or talk about this, or talk about that. How do you synthesize advice and take in what you think is, how do you decide what's good advice, what not to listen to, and how to go with your own gut?
Yeah. There's 2 main themes that I go along here. The first, just good and bad advice. Good advice that you get has a causal nature to it.
Okay.
In the way that if you get the advice that, you need to, increase the amount of wages that you're offering the platform in order to get additional people to apply. There's just a connection between the advice that they're giving you and the output that you want. Sometimes you get this advice that's more correlative, and so that's not as good advice. The example I give isn't the best example, but I think just causation and correlation just helps me to think about what is good advice and what is bad advice. And the second thing here is that as founders, we're experts. We're going to these rooms as experts. We know our business better than anyone else. And, thinking about my personal story, going to investor, I'm the one who has actually experienced these jobs, not only from a crew member level, but also training. And so it's not that I take the advice as with a grain of salt. It's more the case that how does this fit into my existing body of knowledge? And that's how I think about making sure that the advice that I get, that I'm able to use it in a way that's useful for me and the business.
So you said you got a lot of great advice from that program, because you came back to Boston and raised a round pretty quickly thereafter. I mean, what was some of the best advice you got from that group down at Rice that you remember, whether it was related specifically to your deck or related to how you talk about your business?
Yeah. The first one is, I alluded to this a bit, it's that you're the expert about your business. And if you go into a room and you are confident and you know that you have all the right facts and figures and data about your business, it's just to make sure that you're conveying that in the way that not necessarily putting the investor in a position that's subjugated to you, but you're coming into that meeting as a meeting of peers. It is very easily to become intimidated when you're fundraising, especially pre-seed, especially if you've never met with an investor before. And if you go into that meeting thinking of you as peers, as exchanging thoughts about how to create the biggest business that you possibly can, then the outcome for the meeting, given that you've made the case well, is going to be will be positive.
I think that's great advice. Yeah,
that's the most important one that I've gotten through this journey. There's a lot of smaller bits of advice. A lot of them I picked up myself, just learning through the 3 days of that tournament. Just understanding that repetition is the key to making sure that you can convey that confidence in these types of meetings. The one thing that I have to continue to remind myself is exactly that. And it's because, as CEO, you're doing a lot of external things, a lot of internal things. It's very easy to get too mired in the details because I have an inside view. And so trying to abstract that, but then abstracting that and also seeming confident when oftentimes you're still figuring things out for yourself in the business.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. Were there any things that didn't work well through the fundraise that you think back on and you go, oh man, I can't believe I used to talk about that or this or the other thing that you would advise people against doing?
Yeah, there's a ton of mistakes that I've made in pitches. Whenever I've had a bad pitch, it was always because I didn't practice beforehand. And so I can go into symptoms of what that looks like. Either, I didn't show up on time because it was very difficult to find the office. That's a lack of preparation. All these things, all the things I could tell you that I think a lot of founders would tell you, they're all symptoms of not properly preparing and really iterating your pitch, all of them.
And how much time would you spend researching the investor or their organization before you'd pitch them?
Yeah, so I have a competitor. I would spend a great deal, especially if they had either experience on boards that were competitive, or not competitors necessarily, because I wouldn't be talking to the direct ones at least, but companies are in adjacent fields, or they were targeting the industry that I'm currently building SYRG into. I would make sure that I looked at their portfolio companies, search the firm and their focus areas, and just making sure that I can see my company being a good fit for not only their firm, but also the partner that I would suspect would lead a deal for SYRG. Yeah.
How would you, so a lot of times founders, I hear founders say, well, the venture capitalist just doesn't understand my industry or the problem I'm trying to solve. And I got to imagine in your case, this is it's obvious, right? Like if you never worked in quick service restaurants, you probably don't understand the problem here, right? And I'm guessing a lot of VCs probably didn't work in quick service restaurants. I never did. I worked at a golf driving range, would be about the equivalent, where I was using a cash register and stuff, but I didn't come home covered in shredded cheese and lettuce. What was your strategy for putting the VCs in the shoes of these people that you're trying to solve their problem?
Yeah. Often I would ask that they actually have had a job in either fast food or an hourly workplace. And then we can sort of get into the real kernels of why what we're building is special and unique and differentiated. That backfired twice because people said they worked in hourly industries but didn't. I found out in the end. And so I asked 2 questions now instead of just one. However, outside of that, one of my, and I forget the channel on YouTube, but what they do is they take an expert, let's say in neuroscience, and then they go ahead and explain the neuroscience to someone who's 4 years old, someone who's 10 years old, someone who's 18, someone who's in the industry, someone who's also a PhD. Yep. It's just interesting to see the way that they explain it to all of these different types of people. And as a founder, you need to have your story for the investor who's a 4-year-old, for the investor who's the 8-year-old, someone who has worked in the industry. You need all of those responses. And you need to practice each of those types of responses depending on the investor and their experience in your industry.
That's awesome advice. So we're just about running out of time here. Is there anything we didn't touch on that you would like to pass along? Any other advice you received or best practices, just last words of advice for the entrepreneurs out there?
Yeah. If you have an interesting business, it will get funded. If you are able to show that you have the ability to create outsized returns, despite all of the different things that and data that we're able to see about either underrepresented founders or women raising money, investors in particular, they're looking for an outsized return. And if you can create the case that your business will do that, then you will get funded.
That's awesome advice. And so I like to finish by asking one final question, and that is, how would you describe yourself in one word?
Oh yeah, that is part of the questions. So the thing that comes,
there's no right or wrong answer here, Rahkeem.
Yeah, that's the one question I didn't expect, and I should have expected that question. Let's see, right off the bat, one word. The easy one is I'm empathetic. I'm a compassionate guy. Actually, Rahkeem means to be compassionate, and I am. It's about my business, about my employees, about the mission that we have as a company, the vision that I want to achieve. the people, the stakeholders that are important for that to happen. I have compassion for it because this is the reason why I have built this business, to help those people.
That's awesome. I agree. You are a very compassionate person. So you're very self-aware there. Before we jumped on this call today, I described you as a man of many talents. And so that is why it's hard for you to come up with one word, but I think compassion really sums it up well.
Yeah. Thank you, Charlie.
So thank you so much for being on the Fundable Founder today. I really enjoyed hearing about your story. I think you gave some great advice out there for the entrepreneurs who are looking to raise money. So thank you so much, Rahkeem.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me, Charlie. It's been really fun.
To innovate, invent, and disrupt? We're your partner to fuel your growth. Contact us to learn more.